Aloha! And welcome to The Measure of an Episode, where it is our continuing mission each week to explore what makes a Star Trek episode a proper Star Trek episode and not just, a character introspective...
I'm Paul. The criteria by which we judge these episodes is, number one, does it contain science fiction? Is there an element or exploration of science fiction in the episode? Number two, is this science fiction novel or unique in some ways? Is it expressed in any kind of novel way? And number three is another criteria that is, morality. Morality. Is there an element of morality in the episode, whether it is addressed or a conundrum, if you will, by a character or in terms of the entire plot line being... Anyway, this is taking way too long. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan, and we try to keep those criteria as succinct as possible. And this week, if you remember from last week's episode, we watched 30 Days, which is episode 9 of season 5. I almost said season 5. Season 5 of Voyager. And the blurb says, in a letter to his father, Tom Paris tells the story of the events leading up to his demotion to ensign and his sentence to 30 days in Voyager's brig. It just felt like it needed to be said that way.
I will say you kind of hit the nail on the head because specifically the music in this episode and kind of just the bummer that Tom Paris has that's kind of out of nowhere. It kind of nailed. It felt like something my parents would watch on the BBC, whatever, where it's like there's just a guy sitting on a bench just being sad, and the music is just like a flute
right.
and like a string pad, it's just like doo, 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 doo. And he's like, oh, and I'm just like, oh God, is this a Star Trek episode? What's going on?
We'll always have Paris.
Unfortunately.
Right? I know. They seemed like they really wanted to get rid of him in this episode.
Yeah. So, are we done with the intro yet?
Yeah. So I just want to say, it's just starting off right out of the bat. Yes, this is a Star Trek episode. It absolutely hit everything.
You mean a proper Star Trek?
Yeah, sorry. Yes, this is a Star Trek episode because it says so in the title, and that's what that's what we do on this podcast. So that's why we watched it. Yes, yeah, it absolutely is a proper Star Trek because it most definitely and solidly ticked off all the boxes. But it was like the writers also were like, okay, how can we make this a Star Trek episode? Here is a sci-fi situation, and here it is unique, and we have this moral and ethical dilemma. Okay, great. We did that. Now let's write the episode. And it was just so... it was like... I don't know. It was just so boring, but it's not... It wasn't
bland.
Yeah, yes, thank you. It was bland.
It was bland. And this is the second episode that we've seen. I don't remember which one came first, but there was another episode where Neelix is recounting the story by telling it. Right. And there was less of Tom Paris kind of voice there. I don't even remember if there was voiceover of him recounting in this letter to his dad what was happening in real time.
There was.
So
yeah.
There was.
Yeah.
So I don't know why there's this this impulse to tell stories this way. Because if you were to completely delete, start the flashback or start the episode right at the flashback, we win back nothing.
Right.
Because all we get, I guess it would make for kind of a bad ending, I guess, but you can write it any way you want. I just don't understand the part where you have to start it at the end of the thing that happened to entice us to watch the whole episode. That's what they're doing. They're essentially giving you this dramatic event out of context and saying, ooh, don't you want to keep watching, everybody?
Well, yeah, and this time around, there was nothing else in the cold open. He was sentenced to the brig, and then the titles. And so, it wasn't even... We literally knew nothing about it. You would stop there and be like, oh, sad for Paris. All right, let's see what else is on. But so I will speak to, the writing side of it. The episode was 10 minutes short, and they had to figure out what to do with it. And so they came up with doing it in flashback and actually having it be a little bit more on Paris's side rather than just telling it straightforward.
That's interesting. I guess that sucks that they had to artificially augment the episode in time with this thing. I wonder how often that happens. I guess maybe they felt that because normally you have way too much episode.
Right.
They must have cut some big moment. They must have cut something out of it because I feel like very rarely do you shoot an episode and end up with not enough episode. Normally you're making a lot of sacrifices to cut out stuff because...
Sorry, no, this was the scripting runtime. Like when they were...
Oh,
yeah.
So they hadn't shot it yet. Just the script, it was not long enough.
Right.
So add some stuff.
Right.
Why did you have to copy and paste the end and put it at the beginning? It's like, well, we added stuff. Now it's right. Yeah, but it's the same material. You just took it from the end and put it at the beginning.
Well, and what's funny too is the writers actually said they the stuff that they inserted they enjoyed more because it had to do more with the character side of things. And I'm inclined to agree. Like I feel like the moments with the Doctor and with Kim in the brig, kind of calling Paris out on his behavior and his personality, like were better than what was happening with him in the flashback. No, disagree.
I don't know. I guess I would have to see it without the stuff that they put in for time. I felt like why not beef up the science fiction part of your science fiction show as opposed to making it this character study that really has no effect on the actual plot. Right. They sort of created this, I guess, I mean, they didn't create it. Paris has always had trouble with his dad. They've always had a weird relationship. Uh-huh. But why not give him something to talk about that is inherent and endemic to the actual plot instead of having this whole other, I guess what you could call it, a B plot, where he's now troubled about his dad that really isn't even necessarily, I mean, I guess he has that dream where they juxtapose his dad telling him he's no good and he has to join Starfleet when he's 7 years old, and then I don't know if you caught this. They also juxtapose that with Janeway sentencing him to 30 years in the brig,
right?
to solitary confinement. Yeah. Did you hear her say that? I had to rewind it to make sure she said 30 years.
Yes,
I thought it was an interesting nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I felt like it. I didn't care about that. And I felt like I didn't care about it because it was something they tacked on and expected me that just because he's sad and the music is sad, that I'm automatically going to start caring.
Right.
And I didn't. I was more interested in the actual science fiction of the show, which we can get into later, and I appreciated Tom's sort of activist stuff that happens. Mm-hmm. But that had nothing to do with him being sent to the brig and him wanting to write a letter to his dad.
Right.
I mean, I got the impression he did that not like he was wanting to do it for a long time and didn't have the time, and he finally found the time. He was so bored that's like, what else can I do? I know, I'll write a letter to my dad.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And it was, I mean, having nothing but time and being in jail for a second time, I could totally see him doing that, taking that opportunity to be like, well, kind of what he said, like, kind of what he said at the end, but just doing it to kind of explain to his dad why he did it. So at least that way he would understand and just, not think like, oh, my kid's a screw up again. But on the flip side of that, like, I feel like if you're trying to impress your dad by explaining why you're in jail, you've kind of already lost.
Yeah. You shouldn't lead with it.
Right. Right. Yeah. I'm in jail, but let me explain why. And you know,
well, it would have been. What if you did it like this? Because part of this podcast, we don't just review and perhaps analyze these episodes. We try and make them a little bit better too.
Sure.
Maybe some ideas, some suggestions. So why not, instead of definitively showing that he's in the brig, why not just show him kind of sitting down in a close-up in a vague area, and you start off like the first thing you see is over black is "Dear Dad," right? And then it pops up to Paris looking shaven, and then as he tells the story, he becomes less shaven, a little bit more disheveled. He's in his T-shirt, his standard issue Starfleet T-shirt. So as his story progresses, we're starting to think, oh, why is he getting kind of worse and worse physically? And then by the end, we see the pull back that he's been thrown into the brig for 30 days, and he's chosen not to take care of himself. And that would be at least a little bit more interesting as sort of as the reveal as to the punishment for him being insubordinate.
So I'm actually going to take it one step further than that. What if it actually takes place in the future where everyone has starships?
We've got some news for you on that front.
quick side note. There was a Reddit where the person said, like, whose idea was it to add 2 extra months in the middle of the year to make September, October, November, December not the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th month of the year? Whoever thought of that should be stabbed. And the response was, have I got some excellent news for you?
Oh, that's brilliant.
I know.
What an opportunity.
Right?
That is a once in a millennia opportunity that somebody was able to take advantage of. That's
Right.
amazing.
Yeah.
Unless it was a whole setup.
I know.
mean, it almost seems too perfect to not be a setup.
Right,
But,
right.
man,
But yeah.
if it's not, man, kudos to that guy.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed that. Anyway, hang on. Let me.
That will never happen again.
Right.
Ever.
Okay, so the idea is that it's actually in the future when the subspace messages are now in close enough range that they can be delivered. And his dad actually does receive the letter, and he is sending it from the Delta Flyer saying, I am about to be charged with whatever, insubordination, violating the Prime Directive, and some whatever all those things were. So he's like, I am at the very least going to the brig, if not completely decommissioned. But before I go, I wanted you to hear my side of the story. So now we're being told it from the Delta Flyer, and we actually don't know what the end result is going to be.
That would be cool. And you could set it up in such a way where it's not clear that Voyager ever gets back, that somehow he's gotten this message
Right.
either after his death or before his death. We don't know.
Right.
So you're not spoiling the end of the show necessarily, but that, yes, you start out with the dad picking up this message that comes in.
Yeah, well, and it also raises the stakes a little bit more for Tom and the alien Riga, because in this episode, when they're talking about how they're going to fire on the Delta Flyer, it's like, oh gosh, are they going to be okay? Well, this is a flashback, and Paris is in the brig, so yeah, they're going to be okay. Like, it just eliminates that level of tension. Whereas, kind of what you're saying, like if this is sent and we don't know if Voyager made it back or not, like the tension is actually still going to be pretty high. Like, we assume that Janeway's not going to fire on Paris, but we don't know.
Right. All right. Well, let's get into the episode. There's kind of a lot to talk about, surprisingly, because it is kind of a thin narrative, I guess. Not thin. It's just, I can tell that they ran out of time.
Right.
No, that they had a surplus of time.
They were trying to figure out what to do with it, and they put in too much Paris retrospective, so they ran out of time.
So they show us kind of an abridged version. The whole thing starts out with an abridged version of Paris's demotion, and they throw him into the brig, and we're like, what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
And
wow.
yeah, and we don't know. Paris is visited by Neelix, who gives him his rations, and he asks for a pad, as they call it, PADD, personal assistant digital device.
Oh.
No, I made that up. I'm surprised I could come up with I could reverse engineer it. I don't know what it stands for. I think it does have I think PAD is a acronym, though.
I think so, too. Yeah. I was just impressed. That you knew that. Anyway, yeah, sorry.
No, I have no idea. I have no idea what they stand for. I made it up. But that is not the acronym. Anyway.
Person authorized to direct. Nope, that's not it. Sorry about that. Personal access display device.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, pretty close to yours.
Yeah. That all means the same thing.
Right.
Anyway, okay. And then we get to my favorite part of this whole episode, by far.
Captain Proton?
My favorite part. Captain Proton.
Wow.
If there was ever anything I could just watch episodes and episodes of, I'm glad it just wasn't this long extended thing.
Mm-hmm.
But so after that happens with Harry Kim, Ensign Kim, and who's going to come back later in this, by the way. This is all subterfuge. Let me just give you that, okay? Remember Ensign Kim for later.
Okay.
So they get called to the bridge, and they say, they're walking down the thing, and they're talking about who Ensign Kim likes of the two twins. And Tom Paris proceeds to have the most misogynistic conversation that has ever existed in Star Trek. He basically says that because Kim likes one of the twins, and that twin doesn't like him back, but one of the other twin likes Harry Kim. Can you imagine? What a great episode this might make. Anyway, Tom Paris then just immediately says, it doesn't matter. They look the same on the outside.
Right.
That's basically what he says. And Kim's like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, there are microphones in here. Like, want to cancel?
He's saying out loud, like, what are you talking about, bro? And like giving him the next slice of knock it off. So quick, I mean, we've talked about the twins before. This episode is the only time we ever see the twins.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh. So it wasn't a waste.
There was a payoff, I guess, to a certain extent, but
okay. So this whole Captain, so for the listeners, what's happening is Tom Paris and Ensign Kim, the two twins, the Harrison Benson twins, they are acting out an episode. Okay, yeah, fine, whatever. I've heard it both ways. They're acting out an episode of Captain Proton, and it's not obviously not a defined narrative because in the middle, so they're all play acting. It's almost like they're giving a play for themselves, which because they're like in character. And I always felt like I don't know if I had a holodeck, would I want to? Is that how I would enjoy myself, or would I want to sort of be a character that was myself interacting with a predefined plot that was kind of taking me along on just like watching a movie, except I'm in the movie and I don't know what's happening. Like but I don't have a script. They obviously have scripts that they're going off of, that they're because Tom Paris tries to come in and save the day, which seems like it's the plot, except Harry Kim says, "What are you doing, man? You're ruining the whole thing. This is the best part for me." And so we're reading different scripts. I don't understand where the entertainment comes from and what's the paradigm.
Well, I think it's not unlike a murder mystery where you do come as a character and you have a general idea of what the plot is going to be, but you can have conversations that are completely off script and impromptu and all that kind of thing. And it's just for whatever reason, I mean, because Paris is Paris, like he went completely off script, and Kim, is kind of like, this is why I don't like doing Captain Proton with you, especially when we bring in girls. Like, you just...
Right. I mean, it seems like Dixon Hill from Next Gen.
Right.
That makes more sense, where, yes, he is a character, he's a predefined character, and he kind of plays the part of the character, but it doesn't seem like he's ever following a script. He's sort of letting the narrative take him along. It's like, Dick, we need you to come down to the bar. He's like, all right, I'll be right there.
Right.
In case you were wondering, those were not the same character. Those were two very separate characters talking to each other.
Well, it sounded like Janeway and James Bond, but okay.
Nailed it. Yeah, that's exactly what was intended. So that makes sense. This other thing doesn't make sense with Captain Proton. It seems like they're just kind of like they're 3-year-olds, or rather 7-year-olds, kind of acting something out when they're playing, but don't really have any sense of what they're doing. They're just kind of enjoying the moment somehow. It's not really intellectually stimulating or entertainment-wise. It's just kind of, we're wearing the costumes, let's beat swords together for a while, and then we'll go over here and do that again. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it felt like.
Well, yeah, and I think it totally depends on the number of people that you bring in. Like if it's Stewart or Picard all by himself, then the computer is providing the narrative for him and he's following along. If it's 4 people, or like 8 people going in, then it's kind of, here's the world where you can play and we will give you an objective, but how you get there is completely on your own.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't know. That's not how I would like to spend my holodeck.
Well, then don't go with other people.
Or with why couldn't it just be something where we're both kind of in a narrative and have to solve a murder?
Where we're both kind of in the narrative is also what happens with Data and LaForge, when they're doing Sherlock Holmes and Watson. Like, absolutely that can happen. But I feel like the more people you get involved, the less the story is forced upon you. And it's more of like it's more of a casual thing that the computer. I would guess. I mean, I don't think that Well, let me rephrase that. I absolutely think that it is just the writers kind of doing whatever they want in the holodeck because they can do whatever they want because they're the writers. But I think to like kind of explain it a little bit is just that it's just that. Like the more people that are involved, the less possible it is for you to keep the story going.
I mean, I guess that maybe that's fun. Maybe that's what they liked. It's like play acting. It's like they were doing a play,
right?
Which maybe that's what it was for.
Yeah, I
mean,
mean
that was the intention.
Yeah, well, and being the holodeck, you can do both. Can I just tell you really quick? We're like 10 minutes into the episode.
Well, there's so much to talk about.
Clearly.
So far, we've gotten letter writing and play acting.
Oh, this play was written by second graders. Got it. This episode.
Same thing. Doesn't matter. It's all in crayon.
On a napkin. Water planet. Daddy mad.
It's brilliant. He cracked it. Little Timmy cracked it.
Since we're segueing into that, actually, that's how the plot developed. There was somebody who said they want to do an episode that's based around an ocean in space, and they loved the visual idea of that so much they tried to figure it out, and they made this political episode, which we haven't even talked about yet.
Yeah, I guess so. So that's what drew me in to the science fiction. I felt like this idea of, which they actually answered. They didn't even leave it kind of hanging, but they just didn't explore it in the way that I wanted them to.
Uh-huh.
They kind of focused on this Tom Paris environmental whatever lecturing they wanted to give us.
Yep.
Yeah. And I felt like that was the most interesting thing. They have this water planet, which to me wouldn't be that kind of crazy to encounter. I mean, our planet is mostly water. But my point being is that they found out that through, so to go through it, they meet this alien race. The alien race thinks they're being attacked. They say they were not. They learn that there's this crisis with their planet, that it's losing all of their water, and we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's happening. And so they discover that there's this ancient device holding all the water via some sort of gravitational whatever. And that is what's created this planet of water. And I was riveted. I loved this stuff.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, oh, we get to now try and discover, okay, who made this thing? Why did they make it? And why, what drew it asked so many questions. And then through sort of a 30-second monologue, we get to know how it came to be. And it was not cathartic or satisfying.
No, it was just an ancient civilization, and why did they do it? Who knows?
Right. And that was it. Well, it wasn't. It was a mystery asked that could have once again, we say this all the time, could have spanned multiple episodes, them trying to figure it out.
Right.
I could imagine several episodes happening of they want to help this race because there's this huge crisis. They're all going to die. They have no way of evacuating their planet. They don't want to go. They've been there for thousands of years or something like that. And so they have to find out, and they discover through a bunch of different, mystery points that the Borg made it or whatever. It could have been really interesting, but no, they just handle it in 30 seconds of dialogue and then get back to Tom Paris doing whatever.
That would have been such a good thing if they had taken kind of your idea and gone in that direction where they were trying to find the original planet, and that could have given them kind of a history repeating itself thing. Like they found the planet. It's a dead planet, like, because obviously all the water's gone, and they find the computers, and they're able to upload the messages, and it basically says like we let our pride and our hubris get the better of us, and we opened Pandora's box or whatever they did to launch that probe and move the water off, and now we have nobody but ourselves to blame, and we hope that the next alien, whoever it is, does not make the same mistake we do. Like letting politics get in the way.
I mean, I got the impression this was not their home planet, that they were doing this to just a random planet to harvest the water from.
That's the ancient civilizations?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That it wasn't that. I don't know why you'd ever want to do that to your home planet.
Well, and what I took it as was like it was just they spent so much time thinking whether or not they could. They didn't bother to ask whether or not they should.
Once again, I'm confused. Like, were they making dinosaurs? I don't understand.
You lost me.
Yeah, so they find out that it was made by this ancient civilization. And I was totally hooked. And then you're right. They turned it into this political thing where they started lecturing us. And that's where it lost me.
Yeah,
right?
they basically, like, they could have turned to the camera and said, if you don't stop drilling, you are going to kill the planet.
Yeah, I hate it when they do that. And honestly, Star Trek doesn't often do that. They tend to kind of keep it agnostic in terms of politics.
Yeah.
But
they're not that didactic, right? Not
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So while there's this sort of Star Wars prequel moment when they're underwater and they encounter this giant electric eel, and I was thinking to myself, this looks exactly like the Phantom Menace when they're trying to escape and go through the planet core and try, where they're being chased by bigger and bigger fish and everything.
Right.
And so it happens that the flyer, while it's exploring this ancient device, is attacked, and then they spring a leak. And they have to, and Tom Paris, goes over to where the leak is sprung and starts touching where the water is sort of slowly leaking in. So they're at like thousands of kilometers down underneath water.
Mm-hmm.
And they spring a leak. And let me just say, if you spring a leak and the pressure is that great, the streams of water that are coming through those cracks in your vessel would literally slice through steel.
Right.
You wouldn't just be able to hold your finger over it.
No.
It would just cut your finger off immediately.
Right.
So this thing where you're just like, I'm going to go fix it. Hand me that rag over there. So that was a demerit on their science fiction. Yeah. So anyway, that whole ancient device, sorry to keep going back to this, it really reminded me of the Dyson Sphere from TNG Relics.
Sure.
The Scotty episode. And I was like, oh, this could be really cool. And once again, we talked about this in the Relics episode, where what a great opportunity to explore this very science fiction-y idea that they just abandoned for the sake of the immediate plot, which wasn't that interesting.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, you saying that, like, it would have been such a fun, like, tie back if they had done something in Next Generation with that alien race, and then they talked about that same alien race here. Like, that's how far-reaching this alien race was and how advanced they were. But they didn't.
And maybe you uncover that this race, the race they encounter, may or may not have been responsible in some way, and it was just further political intrigue, that kind of thing. I mean, you could have done so much with this idea that they just kind of abandoned. It's too bad. They had such a good nugget of science fiction. Anyway, so we get a visit from Ensign Kim to Paris when he's in the brig, and Paris is kind of a meanie to him.
Oh, but I love that Kim just gave it right back.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's nice. It was good.
Yeah. He's like, what did your dad always tell you? That you don't finish anything? Huh. And then drops the mic and walks away.
I will say that this is even further evidence of what we will reveal at the end of this. This is all, as I said before, subterfuge. What you are seeing is not what you are actually getting, okay? I just want to throw that out there.
Okay.
So then Paris confronts the aliens about them ruining their planet, and then he winks at the audience immediately. Janeway shoots him down.
High five, Janeway.
Yeah, Janeway shoots him down, and then Paris goes and sulks in the holodeck, where they have, like, once again, that kind of maudlin music that just sounds so out of place. Not only for Star Trek, but just at the time, what would have been a modern show.
Right.
Just felt so kind of like late 70s science documentary when the penguin loses a child to a seal or something.
Yeah. Well, and the dialogue there had a moment that I'm really sad. Like, she walks in and B'Elanna walks in and says, "Here to stamp out intergalactic evil." And Paris gives it a moment, and then he says, "It's funny." And B'Elanna says, "What?" And then he starts talking about, how, like, he always wanted to have a cause and now he's got one, blah, blah, blah. But what I expected was, what you just said, me being here to stamp out intergalactic evil.
But you didn't get that, did you?
No, right. Yeah, I was very disappointed that that's not where the direction that the dialogue went.
Well, once again, we just try and make these episodes just a little bit better, Okay, so then Paris decides to turn activist with the other alien guy, who I actually really liked. I liked this scientist, non-politician guy that the other politician alien guy brings with him everywhere. I really liked this character. I felt like they weren't very alien. Like, for example, they kind of shake hands with the humans and they just didn't feel like they spent much time outside of them wearing bonnets of them being alien.
Yeah.
They just felt very human. They felt very human to me.
Right. And it's something that kind of bothers me about Voyager in general. I don't know if like they were given that note or if they just kind of, they were like, at this point we get it. But in the start, like every alien that they encountered was alien in nature. You know, like there were things that Starfleet did that offended them, or that they interpreted the wrong way in some way. You know, or there was some kind of, not necessarily a language barrier, because the universal translator apparently literally is universe. But yeah, like they came on board and they started shaking hands. Like I really wanted them to do some kind of other physical gesture as a greeting.
Yeah, or just be totally either offended or confused by that kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, there is actually a Voyager episode where Neelix goes to talk to some alien race, and at the beginning, they make a point to do all of these body gestures as part of their communication. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to learn these body gestures. And I felt like, okay, that seems realistic, that there would be races where body language is very, very important and at the forefront of communication. It's not just something that you intuit peripherally,
right,
like it is for us.
Right.
It is more of this, it is their speech. And so they do that. They just decided that, and especially like, why not insert some of that stuff when they have an episode apparently that was too short?
Right.
Instead of copying and pasting the ending onto the beginning, it's like, well, we did it. That was easy.
And that
10
fills
minutes.
up to 44 minutes, right?
Yeah. So anyway, he turns activist, and they have that whole thing where it actually is a well-constructed scene where Paris and the guy are going to fire on the reactor or the oxygen generators, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they're intercutting that between Voyager and Janeway it feels like they're going to shoot Paris.
Yeah.
Because they got ready to torpedo and blah, blah, blah. And that's what it feels like. And you see at the last minute, they say, 3, 2, 1, fire. And they both shoot their missiles. And it turns out that Voyager was aiming for Paris's missile. And so it destroys the missile and apparently disables the flyer. And it's like, oh, that was kind of a nice little shimmy there in what we thought was going to happen. They subverted our expectations of what was going to happen. I don't know. What did you think? Did you know that was happening? Did I just miss something?
No, but what I was confused by was like, so did Paris like ultimately do that for nothing? Like were the oxygen mining pods like ultimately not damaged in any way?
That's the impression I got, that his efforts were totally quashed.
Yeah. Okay. So
that the aliens died shortly thereafter.
Right. But Janeway followed the Prime Directive, so no fault on her part.
Once again, this is a great example of Janeway strictly adhering to the Prime Directive until it's inconvenient to do so. For her, by the way.
Yeah.
Yet another. We should be keeping track of this.
I know, we really should. Like, be kind of have our B podcast of whether or not Janeway is consistent and we just don't like it, or if she really is just written for the episode based on what they need.
I mean, they are that way with Picard too. Picard is very adherent to the Prime Directive until he isn't. Mm-hmm. He does that stuff too.
But I feel like when he does it, there's either a better explanation or there's more internal struggle. And
he is a man.
But Janeway's so smart. But no, genuinely, like, am I just not a fan of Voyager and Janeway, and so I feel like she's inconsistent, or did they write her inconsistent? And conversely, is Picard written just as inconsistently, but Patrick Stewart can portray it better, or is he written better?
I don't know. This might be getting into subjective area, but it does feel like Picard is a better written character and a little bit more three-dimensional than Janeway. And so when he does break the rules, it does feel like it's warranted because of the decisions he's making and predicated on. And so when Janeway does it, it just feels convenient because she feels a little bit less like she's been worked out.
Right.
And I think that's more of a writing thing than it is an acting thing.
There was a scene where she was talking to Paris, and I was picturing Picard during the scene, and it was where she was reprimanding Paris, and I feel like it would have been had Picard done it, it would have been a little bit more like the scene with Geordi when he violated the direct orders to go see his mom, and where he's being reprimanded, and then before he leaves, Picard takes off his commanding officer hat, and says like, "I'm really sorry about your mom," and blah blah blah, that kind of thing. And I feel like the scene where Janeway was reprimanding Paris, this should have been that same kind of scene, but instead she just came across as being his commanding officer and not trying to sympathize with him at all until like she said, yes, I agree with you, but that was the end of it.
It's hard for me to remember specifically, but it felt
Paul.
like what?
That's what the whole podcast is about. You should be remembering every moment. I'm disappointed.
Anyway, yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I feel like maybe it just feels like Janeway is just colder.
Yeah.
As a character.
Yeah.
She doesn't have, in terms of her affection for the crew,
Mm-hmm.
yes, she says it at times, but doesn't really show it, I guess.
Right.
I just feel creepy, like when she smiles. So it just doesn't translate for me, and that's what's going on. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to tell because you're right. It is sort of the same scenario.
Right. Right. But yeah, maybe it is just that. Maybe there's something about her character that they don't give her the opportunity to relax in a way that looks like she's genuinely relaxing and having that kind of camaraderie. I mean, being stuck in the Delta Quadrant, right? That's where it is, or is it the Gamma?
No, Delta.
It is the Delta. Okay. Being stuck in the Gamma, the Delta Quadrant, already getting it wrong. Being stuck in the Delta Quadrant, like you would think I need to be the captain, but I also need to connect with these people because I'm going to be spending 70 years with them.
I don't think that there's even if you have that epiphany about yourself and about your situation, that you can just immediately. I mean, we're only 5 years into their. They have 65 years left, and so she perhaps is in denial about that in terms of really connecting with her crew.
Right.
I mean, there are times where she behaves as though she has great affection for them and a great love and would sacrifice herself for them, but there are other times where it just doesn't seem like she has that at all.
Right.
I mean, her attitude towards it does not translate for me for some reason.
Right.
And maybe that will change as we watch more Voyager episodes. I think we've only seen 12 of them or something like that out of 178. So maybe that we'll get a little bit more clarity on her attitude as we go through.
Yeah.
So anyway, the episode ends with as it began.
Yep.
Although we get a little bit more like back and forth.
Twist. Paris ends up in the brig.
Well, what was weird about the two scenes, the beginning and the end, it's bookended by the scenes where he's being demoted. But they cut out this conversation that they have, which is kind of weird that they would truncate it in that way. It's not like we jump in after the conversation. We show the beginning and then the end at the beginning, but then at the end we show this middle part that has way more, I don't know, that actually felt a little bit more human to me. It felt more realistic.
Right.
And so they demote him to ensign.
Yes.
And I don't actually, what was he before? Lieutenant?
Yeah, I think so.
So they demote him to ensign. And this is where the subterfuge is culminated. Because this was all created. This was all Machiavellianly arranged by Ensign Kim himself. Because now he is no longer the lowest ranking member on Voyager. And he pulled it off.
Right.
He pushes Tom very slowly to go become an activist. We don't see it because that's how good he is.
Right.
He's been slowly being able to do this. And when you think he's practicing clarinet, he's actually formulating plots to manipulate people because he's so sick of being Ensign Kim.
Anything he can do. Right.
Anything he can do. So yes, he still is an ensign, but he's not the only ensign. Right. Now there is a hole in the hierarchy.
Yeah.
That he can now fill.
If I can't move up, I'm bringing everybody down.
Well, a lieutenant has been demoted. And so there is a power vacuum, a lieutenant vacuum who nobody likes. Lieutenant Joseph Vacuum is a terrible person. Nobody likes that guy.
Right. He's the one who gets sent back to save Picard.
But yes, so this is all, I mean, it's very deep in the subtext, but it's there nonetheless.
Yeah.
And that is why I liked this episode. I actually liked this episode.
Right.
It is a proper, genuine Star Trek episode, and I actually liked it. It's a yes for me.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. No. I mean, it's a yes for me, but it was just I don't.
Blah.
Yeah. It was just bland, and I don't feel that it was delivered in a way for me to enjoy it. You know, like I said, like the sci-fi was cool, but I don't feel that the sci-fi for the alien race was presented in an intriguing enough way for me to enjoy that part. And knowing how it ended, there was just no conflict there. Like when Janeway was readying the torpedo, like I knew she wasn't going to hit the flyer in any specific way to cause permanent damage because Paris is the one telling the story. So.
But see, we've had this conversation before. To me, like it's not necessarily about, is Paris going to survive? It's about, well, how are they going to get from point A to point B?
Right, but but I feel like for this specific episode, because I do agree with you that there can be times where it's written well enough where I even though I know how it ends, I still want to see how they get there. This was not written in that way. Like they're trying to build up the tension that she's aiming at the Delta Flyer. But she's not going to. Like it doesn't. There's no way that the photon torpedo is going to hit the Delta Flyer. Something is going to block it, or she's going to miss in some way. That like I was not. The final 5 minutes of the episode, you know, where he's taking off, like her fury towards him and her actions toward him just rang hollow because I knew he was going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things that drove me to like it, I guess. The first thing is the intrigue with the ancient gravitational device.
Right.
I really liked that. I felt like that was creative and interesting. It's too bad they weren't able to expound on it. But the other part, and this is kind of the morality of it. What was funny?
Just that they weren't able to. I know, like they were prohibited to give all the details.
Well, why else wouldn't they do it? They were able to, but then didn't.
Right. Clearly they had that information and we're like, oh no, we better not share that with the audience.
Well, they were short on time. It's not like they're like, we don't have enough time. It's already 50 minutes. What are you going to do?
Yeah. They had 10 extra minutes, filled it with this other stuff, and they were like, oh, we never answered this question. Ow, we ran out of time. That sounds very Lost-esque of them.
What is this, Lost? Yeah. Exactly. They set up that Janeway actually agrees with Tom Paris. He agrees that these aliens are being stupid in their hubris.
Right.
And short-sighted. But she can't do anything because this darn old Prime Directive.
Yep, that darn Prime Directive.
That darn Prime Directive. So she has to essentially, even though she disagrees with how...
Paris even said that. Sorry. He's like, your precious Prime Directive. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's what you signed up for.
Yeah, that thing you took an oath for?
Right.
That one, yeah. She agrees with Paris, but has to act against that. She has to actually endanger one of her crewmen because of the Prime Directive. And I liked that. I liked that kind of, I guess, moral quandary. That even though her enemy in that moment was Tom Paris,
right?
And we were rooting for Tom Paris. I was rooting for him. I wanted them to, I guess, destroy whatever, so the alien race would be okay, you know. And they didn't get that. Right? Janeway was the villain, actually.
Yeah.
She was the one acting on behalf of these people who are going to destroy themselves anyway.
Right.
So I liked that kind of dynamic.
Right. Yeah. And that's fair. I mean, I can concede that is a good perspective to have on it, and it was a nice approach for the two of them. But I feel like it was too much of a heel turn, since again, you know, is it about Janeway's character or is it my perspective? Like I feel like had that been Seven or Chakotay or something, you know, that like she would have been more supportive of their side and defended them rather than agreeing with the aliens.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a perfectly executed script, obviously.
Right.
But I don't know, I was kind of fine with it. I did watch it at 1.5 speed, so maybe that's something. Maybe did you?
I did.
I feel like I'm always doing that. Really, the only ones I don't now are Enterprise at times and Never with Next Gen.
Right.
Those are paced so well that I wouldn't want to ruin that. But yeah, I don't know. I was well enough entertained that I have to be honest with myself that I did like it. And I have said in the past that this is my my
Your guilty pleasure.
what do I call it?
Yep.
My guilty pleasure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And DS9 is one that you don't like, and I guess that has to be my guilty pleasure. But yeah, like I mean, I guess just to kind of go off of Voyager for a second, I am surprised at how much I am enjoying Enterprise. I remember being very disinterested in it when it was first airing, but I am really enjoying the hell out of it this time around.
Yeah, me too. I think that maybe because a lot of the ones that we've watched are in the later. For some reason, that's true for all of them, actually. In the later seasons.
Well, they're in like the seasons 3, 4, which is the later for Enterprise, but it's kind of the middle ground for all the others.
Right.
So, but yeah,
you're right.
I guess speaking of which, let's see what we're watching next. Let me try that again. Speaking of which, let's see what third time's the charm. Speaking of which, let's see what we're watching next. Oh man, it is quite possibly the pinnacle of Star Trek. This is what all episodes are compared to. It's TOS, and it is City on the Edge of Forever.
Now, see, I've never seen this. I mean, I know the episode by name, but
Okay.
I've never seen it.
Okay.
Seen it.
Okay.
So you may or may not be right about that.
Right. Yeah. No, I am.
Because the pinnacle of Star Trek is those are big words.
Right. No, I know. And I think actually it's interesting that it comes up so close to the Times Arrow one, because I feel like both of those are kind of considered quality Star Trek episodes. And yeah, so it's TOS. It is episode 29 of season 1, and the blurb says Bones travels back to 1930s America and inadvertently destroys the future. To reverse the damage, Kirk and Spock also go back, and Kirk falls in love. Oh, man. Just remembering the episode, it's so good.
Oh, I mean, that sounds, just from the description, it sounds like the plot to Back to the Future.
Yeah?
More or less.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I already like it. And it's already not a Star Trek episode. Or a proper Star Trek episode. Because there's no science fiction in it.
Right. So, yeah, let's see if you're right.
Okay, let's go watch it.
Okay.